Vai, vai, finimi in buona. Hi Esther, hi Raj, how are you?
Hi, Winnie. Hi, Raj.
Hi, Esther. Fine. How are you?
We are fine, Raj. You?
Good, good.
Good. Good. Very good to see you
Good to
or
see you
hear from
too.
you. We'll see you
Yes,
later.
yes,
Waiting others to join.
yes. 9 minutes too.
Yeah, fine. We wait. No worry. I realized that I was a bit too early, so no worry. No problem.
Okay, okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
So I wait.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Winnie. Esther. Sorry.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good morning, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Raj.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining the call. I think we're just missing Meetin. Yes. So I don't know whether we give him a couple of minutes.
Yeah, he's joining shortly. Just a few minutes. I've already alerted him. He should be here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But in the meantime, as he joins, my name is Brian Gichero, and thanks once again for joining the call on a short notice. I think we planned this yesterday in the evening, and also to thank Pascaline and Esther for facilitating to have this call. I write for a shipping and maritime news platform based in the US called the Maritime Executive, but I'm based here in Nairobi and Mombasa. And I wanted to have a perspective about, a lot has been said about what's happening in the Red Sea, but we haven't seen a lot of perspectives on what's Africa's agency within that particular space. So I wanted to have, most of you contribute to that particular article. It's going to be more analytical. I know there's a lot of people, as a site, have been covering a lot daily. Most of the attacks which are happening daily, we've been having articles. So I wanted to have an analytical article to hear a perspective on Africa. How is Africa responding to that particular incident? Is it a developing issue like what we had with the Somali piracy? And that's why I'm glad to even have the participation of DCOC, Dr. Ian Lalby. I'm also aware you're from the US. I've read a lot of your work, and it's such a pleasure to see you. And
pleasure to meet you as well.
Thank you so much. And Raj from Mauritius. Actually, this is more of a follow-up from a conversation I had with Raj a month ago of the conference they held in Mauritius on maritime economy. On maritime security. And he was able to tell our readers mostly on the roles of RCOC, RMIFC, and probably I'll also get to hear the roles of those particular institutions at such a time when we need them. So it's such a timely conversation, and I look forward to hear your insights. And just for clarification, once I have the draft, I will share with you so that you can check or cross-check what we'll have captured in it to ensure that we have the correct information put in it. Yes, so let's see how this goes. I just wanted to give that overview before Mitch joins. And so there after he joins, I think we're going to start off, and we can proceed. I don't want to take much of your time. I know it's a Christmas season. Most people are working from home, like myself, but we have to keep the press running. So we don't have another option. Is now on. Oh, he is on. Oh, yes, he is on. Thank you so much, Mr. Micheni. We were waiting for you. I was just giving an overview of why I wanted to have this conversation with all of you. There's a lot which has been said about the Red Sea issue, and we haven't seen a lot of perspective on Africa's agency in that particular incident or whatever is happening in the Red Sea. So I look forward to having this conversation with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. And we can see and probably let people know that Africa is also represented in that particular issue. So I'll start off, and maybe I'll want to address this question to Kiruja Misheni. Not by,
Call me Mitch.
Because you are, yes,
call me Mitch. It's easier.
Mitch. Yes, Mitch. Not because you are late, but it's because DCOC is a critical regional maritime architecture within the Western Indian Ocean. I understand you had a meeting this week on Monday, and I wanted to hear from you how is DCOC responding to the developing maritime security issue in the Red Sea.
First of all, apologies for joining in late. I was in an interesting conversation with Jordan because it appears that ships destined to Israel are putting in the system that they are going to Aqaba, and now they think that they could be a target themselves. So quite interesting. And again, very interesting times. If you don't mind, I'll switch off my video because I'm where I am. I'm on holiday. I'm hotspotting, so my what do you call, the network is not very so strong. So I'll do that.
Yeah, we can see that you are in the middle of mountains and you know, in a camp, especially ready for the beer and for nice, very nice, what's called what they say, nachoma.
You should have said ready for the next beer.
Ah, exactly. I'm ready to. Okay,
Anyway,
I twice switch off because the internet is not so good in my office.
Anyway,
right
nice to see you, Raj. Nice to see you, Ian.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so going straight to the point, and I'm glad I've got my two colleagues, Esther and Winnie, so they can chip in if I forget something. Obviously, this is a matter of very serious concerns for the region, for obvious reasons. First of all, what it means to the cost of goods, the safety and welfare of seafarers, freedom of navigation, but more, very importantly, also the economic impact for the region, and also, the need to do what is right. As you know, the purpose for which the DCOC was established was specifically to be able to get regional states to work together in times like this. So to answer your question, I'm very pleased to know that the region actually took very prompt action when this problem came up, and it was clear that it wasn't going to go away that easy. And I think the first step was the very clear statement with recommendations by the chair of the the DCOC steering committee, that is South Africa. I think that was the first thing, which was like a rallying call with a set of recommendations that, for the international community, because I think the most important thing is the realization that this is not just a regional problem, and the fact that this is something that needs to be dealt with by basically all nations. It's something that affects all IMO member states. It affects all seafarers and all seafaring nations, and like-minded agencies. So, and again, based on the experience from countering piracy, so that was really the right thing to call. So the first thing was the statement. And then even before the statement came, members had already called upon, requested that DCOC should offer a platform for dialogue, so that you can have people together and they come up with a common solution. So I think that is what happened, and there was this extraordinary meeting that was organized. And you've probably seen the report. If you haven't, Winnie will share that with you. And I think that was the first main part. And I think what is happening at the moment is still a lot of discussions ongoing. But I think the most important is that the DCOC is on standby for any support that they can provide in terms of, I think, it's all about the collaboration and coordination. How to have a collaborated effort, so that it's basically all hands on deck. How do you do this? So I think that providing that framework where all can work together, that becomes very important. And I think going back again to the framework of the DCOC, I mean, it's got the provisions that allow for, should I say, regional effort, basically giving the should I say, a mandate to work together, to collaborate together, or should I say, a very good framework of collaboration I think that is where it's come in very well, and it's been used fairly effectively. And we hope that it will continue to be used to rally international efforts. Yes, I'll stop there. Maybe unless is Winnie, Esther, is anything I've left out on this?
No, not from my end. So far, we're okay.
Yeah, you can proceed. You're mute, Brian. You're mute, Brian.
Sorry. Thanks. We are going to come back to you, Kiraju. Thanks for the insights. Let me go to Raj, because at such a time, we need a lot of information sharing. It's a developing issue. So I wanted to have an update of what's happening with the master program in terms of the two centers, RCOC in Seychelles and RMIFC. Are you participating in this particular, in monitoring what's happening in the Red Sea?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
what are some of the trends you have observed?
in fact, thank you very much, Brian. And indeed, I commended the initiative by DCOC GA to look at the matter. And I would say that it was a very important meeting that we had, and on which Mitch deliberated. And I also appreciated what it enabled, the key stakeholders at regional level to understand to get an understanding of what's happening, and hence to get a gist of what it means. Now, to be very frank with you, we do not expect the RMFC and the RCOC to play too important role in that context. But, and what I have suggested, and it is in the report, that the RMFC and the RCOC should collectively, work with the major naval forces of the UNAVFOR and CMF and independent deployers. And hopefully the analysis of these key stakeholders, international key stakeholders, and then we'll analyze what it means for the region, and then disseminate it through the ISN. Because it's very key, it's very important that we don't be submerged by all sorts of media information. It is very important, and this is the role of these two centers, to collectively analyze and think of what it means to the region, and then develop resilience for the region. But work collectively with UNAVFOR, CMF, and the independent deployers. Now, there is some, I should say, some prerequisites first. We have seen that the US is leading now a coalition of 8 countries of the region. Now, whatever that is worth, but what would be good is that there is a sort of a coordinated approach amongst the key international players, and that the RMFC and RCOC, is working with that coordinated approach, not separately with them, because that would mean then each one of the key initiatives to be having its own process, its own analysis, and its own response, which I believe is not so good. So this is what we are up to now. In concrete terms, it would mean that there is some analysis that is done, is shared, and this is where I really applaud the initiative of the DCOC Secretariat, and to have this collective, enable CMF, enable UNAVFOR, enable other independent players to come and give their views, and then to take that and then disseminate it to the countries, but then see what is that we could do in terms of resilience building. So the RMFC could look at, for example, the moment there is some information that comes from UNAVFOR or CMF, if the threat comes down from the Red Sea region below, then what it would mean, that analysis would have to be done by RMFC. And if need be, RCOC can then develop a coordinated approach by some of the countries in the north to see that, you know, that resilience is there. So I think that it would be important that this deterrence approach, so that the risk doesn't come down, is done. So this is where we are heading to. I mean, in the short.
Oh, thank you so much, Raj, for that. Let me go to Dr. Ian. I know you have had more than 30 years of research on maritime security and law. And the first question I had is, what do you make of this security issue in the Red Sea? Is it maybe a short-term thing? Is it going to be a protracted issue for years? And the US has also come up with a new operation, Prosperity Guardian. What do you think will be the opportunity of working with other players? Because I've seen most of the countries, some of the important countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt are not part of that. And how do you make of that particular operation?
So I think, first off, my own background in the Red Sea is unfortunately a bit telling, suggesting this is not going to be a quick and easy problem to fix. So I'll start there. I think the Houthis have been at war internally within Yemen for close to a decade, since 2014. The Houthis have, throughout that time, made a lot of trouble for not only Yemen, but for the wider region. And yet they have not until now been on the global stage. They have not been visible to the rest of the world. Yemen, very sadly, is often the forgotten corner of the Middle East. And for whatever reason, it hasn't grasped the world's attention all that much. And so now suddenly they have the world's attention. And in fact, they have managed to get everybody's attention by attacking the world's economy, because the Red Sea accounts for 30% of global container traffic, 10% of energy. And that means that with a closure of the Red Sea, effectively, because of what the Houthis are doing, we are going to experience economic consequences in every country on earth, whether on the coasts or landlocked countries. It's everybody's going to feel this. The delay of routing around the African continent is at a minimum 11 to 14 days. And with that comes additional costs for fuel, for food, for husbandry services, for all the other services, which means goods aren't going to get to places on time. It's going to take longer to ship things. And all of that includes a massive amount of money being passed on to consumers. And so the entire global economy is going to be impacted by this quite significantly. So that's problem number one in terms of just the immediate consequence. And I think it's worth noting that if you go back to March of 2021, when the Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal, Ernst & Young did a forensic accounting of how much that cost the shipping industry, and it came out to $416 million per hour for 6 days. We're now looking at weeks, months. And so even if it is only a matter of weeks or months, it is still an incredible amount of impact to the global economy. From a more regional security perspective, though, rerouting around the African continent means a major change in African coastal equities regarding the security requirements for maintaining freedom of navigation and the safety of the maritime domain for the free flow of maritime commerce. You literally have 2 to 3 times as much traffic now about to circumnavigate Africa. That is a major, major increase in the volume of ships that are passing by countries that have a history of instability and history of attacks on the maritime domain. And so we've already seen an attack based out of Somalia on the Ruin, and we could see a resurgence in that, because unfortunately, while the narrative often says that there has not been a successful attack, or there have been very few successful attacks against ships engaged in international maritime commerce since May of 2012. The reality is that the skill sets for piracy off the coast of Somalia have not disappeared. They've been redirected towards either fishing vessels that are flagged in states that nobody wants to address, particularly Iran, or to vessels that are already engaged in other illicit maritime activity. And with criminal on criminal crime, it's very difficult to want to intervene, because everybody that's getting harmed is a criminal. So The problem that we have now is that with that increased volume, we have already a greater opportunity, but we also have an inspiration because the Houthis have gained global relevance from these attacks. Who else might want to gain global relevance from these attacks? Who else might see an inspiration to attack the global economy through shipping? And so, particularly as more sophisticated players like the Iranians, like the Chinese, have different equities in this, what are they going to do to either stop or support different activities that may benefit them in different ways? And so this could be a very long-term problem. And if we think that Operation Prosperity Guardian is going to immediately solve everything, we really don't understand Yemen, we don't understand the Houthis, we don't understand shipping, and we don't understand the Red Sea. I've talked to quite a few of the company security officers of the major carriers, so the ones that pulled out first. And what they've all said is that they will not get lured back into the Red Sea until there is a consistent understanding of success on the part of Operation Prosperity Guardian. I've also talked to some of the navies, and we have 10 different navies that have signed up for this operation. And it's a big deal for the U.S. to have a named operation already. It means that there's all kinds of funding and financing that goes behind it. So this is a serious commitment. However, what that is going to look like, no one knows yet, or no one publicly knows yet, because even the shipping industry has not yet been briefed. In fact, the briefing to all the shipping lines occurs in just over an hour. And so we don't know yet what Fifth Fleet has in mind. We don't even know what the contributions of some of these other 9 states will be. And those 9 states are, we have 2 from North America, the US and Canada. We have 5 or 6 from Europe, Spain, France, the UK, Netherlands, and Norway, and one more. I can't remember who the last one is. And then really impressively, Seychelles and Bahrain. So Bahrain was a bit of a surprise, but Seychelles, one of the smallest countries on the African continent, has stepped up. And I think that deserves a lot of attention and credit, because it also shows that they recognize the significant consequence of this, not just for global shipping and trade, but also for the Western Indian Ocean as a whole. And I think that deserves a note, because there's not an Asian country involved. There's only one in the Middle East. And as you said, the 2 countries that probably have the most direct equities in this, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Egypt, have not stepped up. And that is a little bit worrying, because Egypt stands to lose $9.5 billion a year from the revenue out of the Suez Canal, and they're not yet on the scene. And so we have to recognize that, much like piracy, this is a threat to all mankind. This is a threat to humanity, because without shipping, there is no shopping, there's no food, there's no anything that we rely on. And 30% of container traffic means a third of the world's economy, and that means goods, household goods, cars, bulk goods, everything that we rely on day to day could potentially be delayed or become too expensive to even purchase. And so this is a really, really significant issue for everyone. And it's strange that the most immediately affected states aren't yet in the mix. So credit to Seychelles, credit to DCOC, credit to our COC and our MIFC for standing up and being ready to deal with, as I say, a 2 to 3 time increase in the requirements to maintain security in the Western Indian Ocean. But this is going to affect all of us, and so everybody needs to be thinking about how this is going to impact them. And I've got a call later this morning with the Gulf of Guinea folks to talk about how it may affect Western and Central Africa, because frankly, they're also going to see a 2 to 3 time increase in the amount of traffic transiting that region. And so this is not localized because of the nature of shipping. And so everybody has to be ready to step up. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Albi. Back to Mitch. I was wondering, there are so many players right now in the Western Indian Ocean, all trying to tackle the issue of maritime security. Is there an existing platform, or a suggestion to have such a platform or mechanism to ensure that all the players sort of structure a uniform approach to what is developing in the Red Sea, maybe?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, you're right. There are lots of players there, and but I think what unites what unites everybody is a unity of purpose, and that unity being, of course, freedom of navigation. From a DCOC perspective, and as I mentioned, and maybe I'll slightly, from the presentation that Ian just made regarding what is happening with especially the new coalition. There's been other discussions within the DCOC, and I think that's contained in the statement from the chair, as well as the meeting yesterday. The issues of mandate and something that gets people to work better together. There was a recommendation to have a UN Security Council resolution, and I think some countries within the DCOC are trying to call for that, specifically for that purpose. And maybe more importantly, to address some of the issues that Ian raised about key partners being absent, because, and I don't want to be quoted on this, the statement yesterday from the US, it was very clear that it's part of, or the big mission was actually to protect Israel, or it was basically supporting Israel. So, and I don't think that some of those regional partners want to be drawn into the conflict. And I think that's a point that's being missed, and I think that needs to be addressed somehow. But please, I don't want to be quoted on that, but that's a reality of how we move forward on that. And then I see maybe Ian, you wanted to address that before I continue?
Yes.
If I could, one of the things that I think I think you're right, Mitch. This is really difficult because the starting point for this is one of the hottest and most difficult political issues that the world has had for a while now, which is how to address the Israel-Gaza situation, or the Israel-Palestinian situation. And that is the starting point for the Houthi attacks. The problem is that we have very quickly moved from the Houthis being acting in support of Gaza to the Houthis acting in support of the Houthis. In other words, we have already, I think, transcended the Israel-Gaza situation with regard to the attacks in the southern Red Sea. The Houthis cared at first, to some degree, whether the ships they were attacking were destined for Israel, owned by Israel, flagged in Israel, somehow attached to Israel. And then they kind of said, well, we don't care if they're actually Israeli, as long as they're in some way tied to those who are supporting Israel. I don't think they even care now. I think that they have, as I said, tasted global relevance. They've tasted power. They want more of it. And so this is what makes the situation a little bit difficult, because optically, yes, some of the states may, like Egypt, like Saudi Arabia, not want to be seen to be weighing in on the Israel-Gaza situation and taking direct action to address that. However, the Houthi situation actually has to be in some way seen as a separate matter, because it's an affront, as I say, not on those who are supporting Israel or in some ways on Israel. It is an affront to the global economy. And so, the children in Uzbekistan, a doubly landlocked country, are going to feel the effects of this through the increased price of everything. And they couldn't care less necessarily about the situation in Israel-Gaza. It's about the economics of the maritime domain that matter. And so we have to divorce these issues a bit. And one of the problems that I see is that we are still linking them very much in our minds, because that's how they started. But they need to be bifurcated so that we can address the maritime issue that is, as I say, an affront to international maritime commerce, wholly separate from the equities in Israel-Gaza. And so it is unfortunate that the U.S. is making statements simultaneously about these two different issues, because that continues to link them. But I think we have to separate them out.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I think there is, and, going back to your original question, Brian, a lot of, good initiatives. And I think if you look at the, and I go back again to the, to piracy, because this again was a global threat. This is another global threat. And I think it's proven that when nations get together, when there's unity of purpose, it's possible to deal with it. And I think that's really is the key, how you get this cooperation and coordination established and working well. And I believe we will get there. In terms of how we can do it, for example, I know that the Saudis were leading on even having the Red Sea Council, which as a very which I think would be, it's a good initiative in the sense that we encourage nations to work together, and it's something that even within the DCOC circles has been sort of like encouraging that this initiative be established under the auspices of the JED amendment, because the objectives are really the same and the structures are already established. So I think this, if this had been, if it was there in the first place, I think this would have been a very good starting point, getting those, especially those key regional partners, engaged and working together, pulling in the same direction. So I see this is as an opportunity to energize those efforts. And as I said, even within the DCOC conversations, I'm sure there is going to be such efforts are going to be encouraged going forward. And again, addressing the question you asked, Raj, on the information sharing, because information sharing is really critical when it comes to this kind of effort. And we're already seeing a lot happening, even informally, through the DCOC WhatsApp group. A lot is being shared. And I think the recent development where the two MASI centers were incorporated into the DCOC information sharing network. Obviously, that expands the scope of operation in the sense that they were able to work more effectively with them. We're already seeing that happening. And Ian, of course, you saw even in the meeting the other day, the two centers playing quite a significant role. And I think this is something we can build on, and moving forward. There's another development that happened at during the last high-level meeting in Cape Town, the establishment of different thematic areas. One of them is the thematic area on ships and ports protection. Sorry, ships and port security and protection, vital coastal installations. You saw Ethiopia is the chair of that sub-working group of the DCOC, and you saw, of course, Ethiopia has been actually very active on this, and regularly getting contact with the chair of that sub-working group, wanting, asking what more can we do, how are things going, should we be doing more. I think really that those are mechanisms that can be very well supported and plug into what is there, and we move forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Mitch. Let me go to Raj, and I want to base this question based on your experience with the MASA program. Sometimes when you have maritime security issues, states normally try to employ short-term, measures like use of military and navies, which could end up militarizing some of the shipping routes. How do you think probably Africa could build capacity and resilience to have a long-term approach to some of these issues that we constantly have along our coastlines, especially on maritime security?
Indeed, Brian, and this is where, whatever we are now doing is very much in line with whatever DCOC is pushing for. So the 2 points that was just made by Mitch are key. So the MASE centers now are integrated in the ISN, which would mean then that we are now linking up with the whole of the DCOC members, not just the signatory states of the MASE agreements. So this is key. And the second point about ports and the safety of navigation in the region is key. And this is where another area in which we'll be working. So the work that has been initiated by the DCOC, we will also see to it that we are complementing it, because one of the areas in which we are working on the MASE is to look at what is the precise situation with respect to the various aspects of the implementation of the international conventions related to ports security. So there is a long list of areas in which we are working to see to it that we achieve a certain level, a certain threshold in terms of port security and safety of navigation, starting by looking at what is the precise situation of the vessel tracking systems that exist in the country, in the region. And I can tell you that, it is practically upset in the whole region. And so we are trying to work out, create the basis for that, and eventually linking up all this at regional level. And this is where also another area in which we'll be cooperating together with DCOC. And eventually, it is already agreed that next year we'll have a regional policy on port security and safety of navigation. And we have undertaken already 5 national workshops on precise situation with respect to the key verifiable indicators of the level of security at ports in the region. And we hope to extend it to another few. And eventually we'll see with DCOC how we can extend to the whole region. And eventually, most probably, either we will proceed to hold a ministerial conference and agree on a regional policy on port safety and security, or we will eventually wait for all the DCOC members to be in line with whatever we are doing. So this is a very important key area on which we'll be working as well.
Okay, thank you, Raj. Dr. Ian, I saw recently you published a study, I think it was commissioned by NATO, on Africa's start by force. I wanted to hear some of the insights. What did you find in that study? Because in the conference last month in Mauritius, which Raj IOC oversaw, there was an idea to have an African Coast Guard Functions Forum. And I think there'll be an event in Kenya next year. So how do the two ideas come together, and what's going to be the role of it and, the agency in matters to do with maritime security?
Yeah, I think the discussion around the African Standby Force is difficult when it comes into the maritime domain, because personally, I always start with the law, and legally the mandate of the African Standby Force is fundamentally not about security, but it's about defense. It's about conflict, and I don't think we can get to a deployment of the African Standby Force just from on paper, forget the practical reality for a second, without some kind of creativity in terms of how the mandate is used and adapted to the maritime domain. What I do think needs to happen, though, and this is where the discussion of the DCOC and particularly of the MASE centers comes in, is that we need to be simultaneously creative and also very practical in looking at what's working and build on that. Because a lot of particularly external actors want to come into Africa and come up with a very nice plan that looks great on paper, and that would replace everything that already exists and start afresh with some kind of new architecture. That is a complete waste of time. It's insulting, and it's frankly just unhelpful. What is helpful is to look at what is working. And right now, the RCOC and the RMIFC have a huge amount of momentum. That momentum is pretty palpable when you look at how quickly the area of responsibility for those two centers has continued to expand, and now includes the DCOC wider region. And so I think that is the kind of active, already operational infrastructure that we need to see how the likes of the African Union can support, because the whole continent has an interest in addressing maritime security, particularly when it comes to a situation like this that could impact the economy so dramatically. And so what needs to happen is that the African Union needs to think pretty proactively about how it can be more supportive to the existing mechanisms at the regional level that can really provide some of the additional security that's needed. So how can they support the DCOC? How can they be directing funds and assets to the RMFC and RCOC? How can they help the Gulf of Guinea architecture get more fully stood up, rather than coming up with their own parallel track? And so building on what's working rather than starting fresh is really important. And I think one of the things that the RCOC has done recently that deserves also some note is the focus on oil spill response. And obviously Mauritius experienced a terrible catastrophe with regard to the Wakashio in August of 2020. But what we're looking at with these Houthi attacks is the very real possibility of a catastrophic environmental event, as well as, you know, a potential loss of human life and loss of economics. The problem with the Red Sea is that for all of the coastal states, including Djibouti, including Sudan, including Eritrea, including Egypt, including Saudi Arabia, including Jordan, and Yemen itself, the reliance on desalination for drinking water means that the marine environment is particularly important to human life. And so a lot of people tend to think, environmental, that's not as important. We should be focusing on the economy. We should be focusing on the human life. I agree. But in order to do both of those things, we also have to look at the environment. And if the Houthis even make a mistake and hit a tanker that then causes a catastrophic spill, the size of or bigger than the likes of the Exxon Valdez spill, we are looking at not just a situation that will affect the economy. We're looking at a situation that will immediately put the lives of millions of people in jeopardy, because tens of millions of people rely on those desalination plants for the drinking water, and there's a 3-day lead supply. The ability to mobilize water to tens of millions of people in a 3-day window amid all these attacks is almost impossible. And so the other piece of this is the environmental aspect and the humanitarian aspect. And if ships can't get to critical ports for humanitarian assistance, that's another almost freestanding problem. So we were talking about goods getting to people who want to buy them, but what about the food that needs to get to the people who need aid? We have a lot of conflicts in the Horn right now. We've got active combat in Sudan. We have ongoing hostilities in Ethiopia. We have a huge amount of humanitarian aid that needs to get delivered to people who are desperate for it, and the Red Sea ports are a critical access point for that. And so this really is bigger, and so the whole African continent needs to think creatively again about how to use the functional centers that are working to maximum effect and impact. And I agree with Raj. I think was the one that was talking about. It was either Raj or Mitch. Now I can't remember which one of you talked about the Red Sea Council. But you know, I was involved in some of those discussions back in 2018, 2019, and it is really unfortunate that they did not proceed to the point of being a fully operational cooperative initiative to have at least the 7 littoral states of the Red Sea that were inclined to work together able to do so, because now would be the time to deploy that. And unfortunately, that has not yet materialized. So let's look at what has materialized and build that, rather than try to create pipe dreams amid a conflict.
Thank you so much. Kiraju, Mitch, your organization, DCOC, was massively involved in, repression of Somali piracy. Could you share some of the lessons probably we learned from that, process that could be essential in solving the current threat in the Red Sea, to avoid making 2 mistakes at the same time?
Thank you very much. I think I'll focus first of all on what that means to the region, and specifically the region, the lessons that were learned and that have been very effectively applied in the development of the JEDA amendment. First of all, what initially there was so much focus. The word was regional cooperation, and that by one of the lessons that we learned is that you cannot have a regional cooperation if you don't have cooperation at national level. But unfortunately, at that point, and that continues to be in many countries, not just in this region, but you find that although there is no one particular department or ministry that has a monopoly over the maritime sector, you find there's still a lot of agencies operating in silos. So one of the things we've been really focusing on is the implementation of the IMO model and the whole of government approach to maritime security. And even in the setup of a very important, one of the things that, information sharing was established as one of the key ingredients that's helpful in dealing with the maritime security. So in the development of the information sharing network, was before the link was just either an individual or a center at country level, we found that no matter how strong your regional center is, if you don't have strong structures at national level to be able to receive this information and act on it, make sure it's acted upon internally, and for them to also generate their information and share with the regional centers, then you cannot have effective information sharing. And that's why the whole concept of establishing multi-agency national maritime information sharing centers in all the regional centers is in all the participating countries, and of course strengthening the regional centers that like the RCOC becomes really key. And I think this is ongoing, of course, work that needs a lot of international support, because some of the countries still don't have the resources to bring up those centers to the level that we'd like to be. But that is also moving forward. The next one is what we call security for a purpose. I think initially most of the regional countries had not invested well in maritime security. And I think security was seen as maybe something for the navies or for the uniformed people. And therefore, and I think most of the countries also remain very land-centric. So most of investments, for example, would go to developing the armies and the air forces, but not the navy and the navies and the coast guard and marine police unit. So the cell then, of course, has been, selling security as an enabler of maritime development, and of course as a way to create to create employment and stability in all those countries. So that is working well. The other one, of course, is how do you then looking at security holistically, because before the focus was just on piracy, but of course if you're just looking at piracy, then there are those who are, like, for example, the industry may be very interested. But then some of the regional countries that maybe necessarily they don't have shipping, may not be as interested, as they may be more concerned about dealing with IUU fishing because it's more dear to them. It affects them more directly than maybe piracy does. So I think we need to, you need to look at security holistically and dealing with it. And that's why the JEDA amendment was expanded to be able to deal with all those issues and to bring everyone together. And the other one is then how do you get everybody working together using, so basically was to create a framework and create space on the table for everybody. So what has happened here is, the creation of, like, for example, the Friends of the DCOC network, and now bringing, like-minded programs, like the MAZE program that is actually basically within the same region and focusing on the same thing, working together closely with them, pulling in the same direction makes it very effective. So I think that is what we are trying to do, that, get that family strengthened, and we all focus in pulling in the same direction. And I think the other important one, and it's linked to what I mentioned, what I talked about, the whole of government thing. And we need to be a bit more strategic thing in thinking. And I think some of the issues that Ian raised, especially within the African Union, I agree with him fully that there's still a lot that needs to be done, and there's a risk of cherry picking programs here and there, and when and they are not jointed and working together and duplicating new programs and different agendas. So and I think Raj also mentioned that one of the things that the DCOC is planning to do is hopefully next year is the development of a regional maritime security strategy. So, and before that, you'll also develop a regional maritime risk register that informs that strategy. I think that is going to help. And I say this because the initiatives that have been done, especially by the African Union, I mean, like AIM 2050 it's a good document. However, it is, though quite inspirational, it really doesn't have tangible action points that countries can rely on to develop this. And I think one of the things that the strategy will address is try and get the region to focus on more strategic issues regarding how maritime security is looked at. And I hope that, and especially if we see a lot of strength from the DCOC region, and if you have a similar development on with the Yaoundé code of conduct, because there's also a lot of focus trying to energize that. I think there will be at least a good startup for the African Union. And I think going forward, we are trying to, as much as possible, to keep them engaged, to keep African Union engaged, and we hope that we'll be able to get a lot more support to some of the existing initiatives, because starting new ones is not really, I don't think is in the best interest of the region. But it's fixing what is working and building on that. We're already working very well with IGAD, because IGAD is doing some interesting work on maritime security, and they're now working with something which has started recently. We're working fairly closely with them within the DCOC. I already mentioned the Indian Ocean Commission. So I think if we can get that partnership working effectively, I think we'll go far. Thanks.
Thanks, Mitch. I think I see our time is so much spent, so I'll just invite Raj and Ian to just share their final thoughts on what would be Africa's agency in maintaining regional maritime security, especially in that region of Western Indian Ocean.
Jan, you start.
Okay, I'll just say, one of the things that I think is difficult about this is that we aren't looking at pirates. The impact may be similar, but this is a heavily armed militant group that is controlling part of a country that is actually outside of Africa, and yet the impact is being felt on Africa. And so the response has to be a little bit different. One of the things that I think made piracy a lot easier, and I say that recognizing that it has not been easy, is that number one, we were able to put armed guards on these ships and have that help protect them going through the high-risk area. Armed guards aren't going to be able to protect against a missile or drone strike. It's a very different type of threat. And so that antidote is not really possible in the same way. The second is that the legal mandates made it a lot easier to deal with Somali piracy, partly because of the UN Security Council resolution that the Somali government requested, allowing for international patrolling up to the baseline, up to the coast in Somalia, meaning that a multinational naval force could actually provide maritime security all the way up to the coast. And with that also came the reality that under international law, piracy is considered a crime of universal jurisdiction. It's in UNCLOS. Anybody could deal with it, and so that made it a lot easier. Third, the politics of this made it a lot easier as well. These were non-state actors that were fighting against the maritime industry, putting the lives of seafarers at risk. Pirates are considered hostis humani generis, enemies of all mankind. That makes them an easy target for everybody. The Houthis are heavily armed. They're backed by other states. They've been at war for a long time. They pose a real threat to not only the economy, but to the lives of seafarers and to the environment. We can't just arrest them and put them into courts. The part of what changed the context for piracy in both Eastern Africa and now more recently in the Gulf of Guinea was the successful development of the ability to have legal finish. And unfortunately, changing the risk-reward calculus for the Houthis has to be done very differently. And one of the challenges we're going to see is that you can't arrest them and put them into a court. You also can't just fight against them harder, because the Houthis have shown for almost a decade now that they respond to force with more force. They actually enjoy the attention that comes with force, and they will continue to fight. And so unless there is a lot of will to have a massive ground assault to change the origin of these attacks, we aren't going to be changing the situation. We're going to be putting a plaster on it until we come up with a better solution. And right now, the best solution, and this is something African states can consider, is to figure out how to appease the newfound appetite the Houthis have for global relevance without that translating into continued attacks on shipping. And so one of the things that the African states, I think, could contribute that nobody's really been paying as much attention to is beyond the operations, beyond the increased security, beyond the cooperative measures, is looking at creative diplomatic solutions for engaging in a way that allows for the Houthis to find a motivation to stop attacking, and yet at the same time to feed their hunger for relevance. And so it's in everybody's interest to try and do that. And right now, I don't think anybody's taking lead on that. And this is an opportunity for Africa to do so. Thanks.
Yeah, Brian. Final words, just to say that, the region, at least I'm speaking on behalf of, the Western Indian region and IUC. We don't claim to have the capacity or the competence to go and deal with the Houthis or the bigger challenges that emerges from the situation. So, as I said earlier, I think that our focus should be how to build resilience. Jan has made a few remarks on those. Mitch has prompted a few things. And what we will be looking for very much is how MASE, IOC, DCOC, we all work collectively together. We will monitor the situation, but we will try to see and explore what could be our actions, of course, taking into consideration what Jan has said. At the same time, I don't know whether it's a good thing or what, but Yemen has requested formally to be part of MASE, which is, I believe, an opportunity for us to engage with them. Though I do know that, and Jan will correct me, that Yemen is a multi-headed sort of, I won't say country, but it has many, I should say many orientations which are not collectively owned, which means that it is a bit complex to start. But at least we will consider the proposal of Yemen, and then we'll see whether we can at least open a door for some dialogue with some part of Yemen, which would mean then that we can maybe contribute to the proposal by Jan in trying to, work out some diplomatic issues. Thank you.
Raj, can you stay on afterwards just for like 2 minutes to talk about that, actually?
Yes, sure.
Okay, great.
So thank you so much. I think we're actually right on time. I had proposed we end at 5:30. And I'm happy so much for your time and contributing to this conversation. I'll share the draft once I have it ready, and probably we'll see the reaction from the wider audience. So once again, thank you so much for your time, and for those who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. Yeah. So thank you so much. I think for me, I'll have to edit at this point. Yeah. So
Thank you very much, Brian, Mitch, Esther, Winnie, and Pascaline, of course. Thanks very much. And Jan, if we can talk
Yes.
now or via WhatsApp, if you.
I can call you on WhatsApp momentarily.
Yeah,
Yeah, no
call
problem.
me in WhatsApp in 5 minutes, please.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Merry Christmas all. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Brian,
thank you very
it's
much.
great to
Bye,
finally meet
Mitch.
you.
Merry Christmas. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye,
Okay.
Mitch. Great to see you
Bye.
every month now.
Yes.
Great.
Great.
Take care.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.